Gretel and Hansel. So, I saw this film recently, and when I first heard the title, you see a lot of these movies come out, and the big idea of some reimagining of something that's so well known, it's something that you probably won't take seriously because every story has already been done, right? So how many times can you actually like make something new again? And at first I thought Gretel and Hansel was just a sort of like twist around of like Hansel and Gretel. Even when I was buying my ticket, I said, I want like, one ticket for Hansel and Gretel. And I felt silly like saying that because I knew that it's Gretel and Hansel. Why am I talking about any of this? Well, the reason I'm talking about this is because it is surprisingly something new. It is something new reinvented from something old. Gretel and Hansel at first, by the title alone, I thought that this was some sort of precocious, sort of like way of our time, sort of like saying that, oh, it should be Gretel first, because take that, patriarchy. Yeah, I'm going to be like fully out there, like blunt. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was just like, oh, this is sort of like get with the times. This is a new story from an old story, but really, like, even while I was watching it, I understand. I understand why this was done, and I understand why this was approached in the manner that this was approached. Because the story primarily focuses on Gretel. Both in, like, the old way back version, as well as, like, many, many retellings. Okay, so what happens? So, okay, quick synopsis time. Okay, so what happens in Gretel and Hansel? Well, okay, two essentially forsaken children are lost in the woods, and then they are found and tricked and tempted by a witch that lives in the woods with plans of eating Hansel. So who has to get Hansel out of this situation? Well, it's his sister. I mean, she's the one that gets the key to the cage. She's the one that essentially plans the destruction of the witch. She actually does all the footwork. It really is her story, and deservingly so. It is her story. And this is something, yes, once again, it's something new from something old, and I really did appreciate that. I was looking forward to this film for months now. Primarily because of the director, Oz Perkins. If you don't know who Oz Perkins is, okay, as far as the list of credentials goes, there's one that maybe everyone knows, kind of. In Legally Blonde, he was one of the law students that he kind of was very, like, stiff and awkward and kind of, like, nerdy, and Reese Witherspoon, like, had a fake sort of confession of, like, oh, you gave me a night I'll never, like, forget, so that he could go out with another, like, law student. Whatever. Okay, fine. So he was that guy. But the reason that I kind of like know this director and I know his name, and I was actually genuinely excited about hearing that he has a new project, or had a new project coming out. This was in 2019. Was he is the director of The Blackcoat's Daughter. Blackcoat's Daughter is to me, Blackcoat's Daughter is very Hitchcockian. It's very it borders on magic realism. It's about a young girl who believes that essentially Satan is her BFF, and she commits horrible atrocities because of something that the film wants you to believe. And this is kind of a plug for The Blackcoat's Daughter. It really is a good movie if you like atmospheric horror. Then you would like this. If you like A24. If you like Blumhouse, if you like A24, then yeah, this is something that you should look into. The Blackcoat's Daughter. Spoilers. Well, no, not too many spoilers. Yeah, like, okay, it's about a young girl who commits a series of like murders, and it's never clearly defined how much of the supernatural is actually invested in her and actually like making her do these horrible, horrible things. It's left up to the imagination of the audience, and we're left to make up our own sort of like mind as to exactly like what is going on and why this is happening. Spoilers, she cries because her BFF doesn't show up to give her like totes praise when she commits murders, and then she just like she's sad. But that's okay because, you know, she's a serial killer. I'm not really supposed to feel something for this character. Anyways, point being is that I saw the Blackcoat's daughter, and that's how I knew, like, oh, this is Oz Perkins. Oh, okay. About 3 months ago, because that's when I first saw a YouTube commercial for Gretel and Hansel, I said, yes, okay, because I was intrigued. Obviously, this is something new for him. This is something different with a lot of experimentation going on. Even just in the commercials itself, you can kind of see that. So, okay. So, long story short-ish, because look at the time code. I mean, there's more to it, other than the next few sentences that I will say. I like Gretel and Hansel. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a very well done, sort of new type of horror flick. I say new type because I think we're kind of in a golden age of horror. There's, especially like for witch-themed films, before I start to gush about like too many, like there's The Witch, the 2018 Suspiria remake. This is like Hereditary. This is yet another edition of something that is kind of an up-and-coming subgenre, witch horror. It's like, okay. It's fascinating. It's cerebral. It's poetic. It's good. It's a good film. So, like, all of those positive words, it's a good film. That being said, okay, from this point forward, like, spoilers, because otherwise it feels like sort of like a shallow thing. I was like, oh, what I think of the movie? Oh, I liked it. How about that? You know, like, otherwise I really wouldn't be, like, talking about it. Anyways, okay, so from this point forward, like, full spoilers. If you haven't seen it and you just want to take the word of a ninja, then, you know, like, stop it right here and then hear my thoughts later on, but, whatever. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. So at the very beginning, we have Gretel, who is about somewhere in her teens. I don't know exactly, like, where, but somewhere in her teens. And then there's her little brother, Hansel. Okay. We are somewhere. Very important element in storytelling is setting. So, our story takes place in the magical land of somewhere. Yeah, we don't know exactly. Is it some alternate version of America? Is it Europe? Is it England? Because of, like, a few of the beginning characters have, like, British accents. It's hard to really tell, but it's somewhere. And we open with Gretel explaining to us the current situation in her life and in her world, which is things are bad, but in narration. Immediately when I heard the narration, I sighed. Like, there's an old saying, show don't tell. I think the narration, the way it was used in this movie, was supposed to be, oh, someone is reading a story to you. Oh, didn't really come off that way. I kind of have to stretch like a little and reach for that possibility, which I don't like. Once again, see, don't tell. Whatever. Okay, so Gretel starts to narrate, and, well, times are bad. So, my mother wanted me to get a job. It's like, I mean, yeah, okay, that's fine. Clearly this takes place in a time many, many years ago where it was just expected for people to just kind of provide for their family at a much younger age. And I say that. That being said, she was a teenager, so I mean, it's not that unusual for her to get a job, but I'm not going to get off topic. Anyways, so she goes to a local estate where she is then asked really, really inappropriate questions for an interview. She's interviewed by like a very Harvey Weinstein type. And I'll just kind of like let that be it. I don't even want to repeat the questions. That's massively inappropriate. Very, very shady character, very cringy, and he asks her things that a man of really like no one should be like asking her. Okay, so the old creeper asks her creepy questions, and she's like, "No, I'm not working here." She makes a smart decision. She makes a smart decision for a young lady. It's like, "No, This is not going to be my supervisor. This is not going to be the person that has a say upon like my shift hours. Hell no." So, anyways, she ditches the creeper interview, and she goes back home. And like her mom is clearly not in a good state of mind. It's like, well, how did the job interview go? Well, Mom, I didn't think it was for me. He was a creeper, and he asked me like weird and nasty questions. So yeah, I'm not. It wasn't for me. I'm gonna keep looking, but I didn't think that was for me at the time. You have to go. It's your mom's response. Like, you have to leave. I'm gonna keep looking. I mean, like but yeah. I mean, I'm not just gonna hang around here all day and like do nothing. Like, you have to leave because there's too many ghosts in the house. Clearly, Mom is not okay. Gretel tries a little bit more like back and forth, and her mom's response is to scream at her that she needs to leave, and like chops the table, also screaming that she should leave. Okay, so Gretel takes the hint. And she leaves with her brother Hansel. Really, just kind of common sense says that, yeah, like her younger brother should not be in the house right now or ever again, because no, we're not coming back here. We're not doing this. Okay, so they walk down the road a little bit, left foot, right foot, walking down the road, and they come upon some sort of like old cobblestone cottage of some kind, and Gretel says, "Well, this should be a good place. Like, I don't see anything wrong with just like falling asleep in an abandoned cobblestone house, or at least it looks to be abandoned." That situation doesn't last, because in the middle of the night, a crazed, I'm gonna say half zombie man. I'm gonna say half zombie because he doesn't seem like he's like either like living or dead, or that guy just is really unfortunate looking, and he just might like that actor just might have to live as kind of like a zombie man. I don't know. But like he gets up, and then he turns to them and just starts screaming. He starts screaming. They do the appropriate thing, which is like leave. They run. They run out of the little house. They run out of the little house, and then a woodsman saves them. The woodsman saves them, and he's like, "Oh, you poor children, please come with me, and I'll give you shelter and food." So they go with him, and he does provide them shelter and food. And then, like, Gretel's like, "Oh, we're so grateful. He's like, what can we do to pay you for our stay?" "Well, you can't stay here." "Oh, didn't realize we were imposing." "Yeah, I'm just not really in a place where I want kids right now. There's this family called the Foresters. They live, I don't know, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles up the road." I don't know. He's not really, like, good for information. It's like, but eventually you'll get to the Forester's place. And they'll give you, like, a homestead and a place to, like, live and do whatever, they want you to do, or, like, whatever. Can't we just stay here? I mean, you really just seem, like, really, like an upstanding guy, and, like you could take care of us. Like, no, not really. Because I'm not interested. You leave tomorrow. Thank you, woodsman. You've done something great here. You've done something Like, to be fair, the guy actually, like, he did save their lives. Half zombie man, well, like, was attacking, like, both of them as they were, like, trying to escape, and clearly he probably would have done them harm. So yes, he did save these two children from the half zombie man, but yeah, that, like, it just felt weird. You would assume that, like, oh, okay, like, this guy, oh, he's the woodsman. Oh, okay, just like in the fairy tales, how the woodsman is, like, the only put together character in any of these stories, because they're the ones that save people from, like, witches and wolves that devour prey whole, and like, whatever sort of, like bad things are happening, like, in the woods. Oh, who saves them? Well, it's the woodsman that saves them. Or maybe it could have been a subversion. I don't know. Anyways, he's like, so, like, yes. Well, I'm glad that you're not killed by a half zombie man, but you can't stay here. You'll go live with the foresters. The next day, he doesn't even really give them supplies. Like, yes, I want to give him credit where credit is due, that he saved them. Yes, he saved them, and yes, that counts for a lot. But it just seems weird for him to just kind of, like, shove them off, like right after that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But whatever. Okay. So he sends them off to the foresters, and then they start walking. And then, Hansel's getting, like, cranky because they don't have any supplies, they don't have any water or any food or anything. So he starts complaining as little kids. They complain, fine, whatever. And, like, this seems like a situation where it's pretty legitimate for a kid, like, to like, whining. It's like, we've been walking for 10 miles. When do we get there? And, like, she kind of loses, like, her temper at him. And this is supposed to be, like, a bonding moment in the film. Where she, like, she screams for, like, half a second. And then she's like, oh, I feel so guilty. Why did I do that? I'm sorry. I also haven't eaten in a long, long time, and I have no idea where we're going. And we're probably gonna die. So, sorry, Hansel, that I don't have all the answers for you right now. Anyways, they come across a cottage. They come across this cottage, and like in the commercial, Hansel starts to lose his mind. He's like, oh, I smell cake! Like, oh boy, like this kid, like, if it wasn't for a very specific set of circumstances, you would probably be just dead in a day. But anyways, they both, like they smell delicious food, and okay, so they try to make their way inside. They are found by Alice Krige, who plays the witch. Never given a name. Oddly enough, never given a name. But Alice Krige plays the witch, and she is the most grandmotherly type of, like, fairy tale witch that you could ask for. She seems frail, but kind and compassionate. She genuinely seems to care about the children's, like, well-being. She has a pristine banquet, like, set out, just apparently for herself. Apparently, yeah, like, for herself. And, there's, like, the kids, like, they sit down to eat, and this is a spread. Golden Corral ain't got nothing on this. There is, like, a suckling pig, and there's, like, fruits, meat pies, bunches of pastries. Like, yeah, this is, like, whoa, this is like, yeah, this is, like, really good spread. And Alice Krige, like, as the kids are kind of, like, serving themselves on giant charger plates, Alice Krige, like, looms around both of them and says, like, have some milk, good for bones. Like, okay. Like, yes, as the audience, we know, it's like, oh, this is the witch who's planning on eating at least one of them. It's the boy. She wants to eat the boy. Anyways, so, okay. But that one particular, like, line read is like, have some milk, good for bones. Like, this is a deep folklorish type witch. Like this is someone who is fattening her victims for the kill. True, but the lore of her as being a kind of matronly or grandmotherly type is fully convincing. So they stay there for a while. And Gretel starts to have some dreams. Some dreams about dead children. Yeah, that's never good. That's never good. Like in any frame of context. No. Okay, so she starts to have some doubts, some reservations about about this witch. And okay, she starts asking certain questions that she doesn't really get answers to. And she starts noticing certain things by like, okay, every single night this table is like laden and groaning with food. And there's no reason for this. She calls her out on like one time. It's like, well, those plums are out of season. They're not gonna last like too much longer. And that ham isn't salted. It's gonna spoil soon. And and yet it doesn't. That's Alice Krieger's reply. It's like, and yet it doesn't. Don't ask questions. Just enjoy. And yes, Gretel is clearly like the brains of the two. So she's like, no, some definitely not right here. You know, she has all this food that just like magically appears. There's no animals. There's no like animals for slaughter or cows for like the milk that they drink or anything like that. There's no garden. So where's she getting like all the like fruit and veggies like from? Hansel, for the most part, doesn't question it. It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to be hungry anymore. That's great. Okay, fine. That's not good enough for Gretel. So she does some snooping. She does some snooping around, and she finds a secret basement. Secret basements are never a good thing. No, they're never a good thing. And inside the secret basement are... well, there's two things. There's the remains of... like, clearly, the remains of children and ghosts. Like clearly, like, we have some... this is the creepy kids. Creepy kids' basement. Why is it the creepy kids' basement? Like, there's even, like, a little girl, and I don't know if Oz Perkins was, like, doing this as a means of, like, oh, like, do you remember this? There's, like, a little kid just, like, in a corner, like, somewhere, like, facing the corner, and, like, immediately, like, if you're, like, a movie person, or if you just, like, are into horror flicks, oh, yeah, okay, that's a little wink, a little wink and a nod to, like, the Blair Witch. Okay, I see what you're doing, Oz. Okay, fine. So... she discovers this child basement, and then she just, like, is fully just, like, out with Alice Krieger. It's like, why are you doing this? And she said, like, well, because this is the way, this is who I am, this is how I live, and this is the only way that I've really ever lived. So, I don't know what to tell you, kid. Oh, by the way, you attempting to, you know, put me to sleep? Nice try. This is like where the movie is like in full swing at this point, where like, oh, okay, like we're gonna cut to the chase. She plans on cooking and eating Hansel, and she wants Gretel to be kind of complacent in this. She wants her to be kind of like a partner in crime. It's like, okay, like, yeah, like, if you don't have a problem with eating children, I'll show you how to use, like, sacrifice magic, and you can do all these, like amazing and wondrous things. Gretel, no, this is not exactly the, like, a very persuasive turn to the dark side speech, because, like, the crux of this, it's eating children, huh? Well, no, I'm not doing that. No, like, in no way would I ever, like, do that. It's like, well, that's too bad. And so she kind of, like, she snaps her fingers, and she's immediately in her creepy basement, and she's like strapped to a table, like, this ain't good. And she's going to, then and there, she's going to cook Hansel, and then serve him up to her and kind of try to force her to be like her apprentice, disciple, partner, whatever. And I skipped a little part, but okay. So in the meantime, while she has been like doing like housework and domestic like stuff, and Hansel has been kind of sort of making himself useful around the farm. Well, she's been learning some magic. Like she knows that like, oh, okay, like like magic exists, magic is real, and she has some like abilities, but she's no Rey Skywalker. This isn't like something to where she just, oh, I could just do these things now. No, there's a very specific catalyst. It's some sort of like a resin or like a balm that the witch has, and she like, she like rubs it into her hands like lotion, or she like dabs a little bit like on her forehead, and then like this activates her powers. Okay, so anyways, back in the creepy basement. It's like, oh no, just like, Hansel, don't go into that cage, which is above the fire pit. Don't do that. Just trust me on this. And like he's hypnotized. He's not just like, okay, it's not just he's like a stupid little kid or something. He's clearly like, he's hypnotized, and the witch is. Which is like, this is for your own good. Like, trust me, you'll thank me when this is all over. No, I'm not gonna thank you for making me eat my own brother. Why would I do that? Anyways, so, and once again, I did say spoilers. She has like a little bit of like this magic resin. She has like a little bit of like this magic resin. She dabs like a little bit, just dab, and. The witch has like a pitchfork, something like a pitchfork. I have no idea like what it is. It's completely wooden. Her staff, like she has her staff and it's like forked at the top, and it's like abracadabra, kill her, like with her mind. She throws the pitchfork at her like with her mind, and she like pins her to the wall just right above like the fire pit, and once again, Oz. Okay, just a little bit too much on the nose here. Oz, like the line read, like her very last line read in the movie is, "Oh, what a world." Do you get it? Because that was something said in The Wizard of Oz. Do you remember who said it? It was the witch. The witch said, "Oh, what a world," right before she died. And okay, like she burns up, turns into ashes, and like just whatever, like just fades away. Gretel busts out, and she rescues her brother, tells her brother like, okay, like, well, this is where we part ways. This is where our stories sort of like diverge. And we don't quite know what happens to Hansel. It's suggested because like later on we see him like back at his like like his old home, and like because we see like where the axe was still like embedded in the table from where the mom gave her very sternly worded eviction, and then he's able to just like pull the axe head just right out of like the table. I think what they were suggesting is that he becomes like another woodsman that, like in fairy tales, maybe like saves other people. Maybe? That's like a big guess on my part, but I feel kind of secure in that guess. Anyways, she stays behind. Something having to do with like the natural order of things, that, okay, she's connected to this place now. Something about, I don't know, moons and Gaia and the power and things like that. I don't know. I really don't like. She gives a reasoning that it's meant for her. So like she's going to be either Wicked Witch of the West or Glinda. Like, and she even mentions like in her narrations like I haven't decided yet. I might be evil. I don't know. I got rid of that other like witch. She definitely had it coming though, because I am not all about devouring children and their souls for magic. So once again, good for Gretel. Good for her. If if only the standard that is not the line that you will cross. Good for you. Okay. It's kind of suggested that she might pursue some form of some form of like evil magic. A part of Alice Kriega's sort of like makeup was just like all of her fingers were like black, and you kind of wondered like why, and it was probably because of like the resin that she used for like her powers. And Gretel's fingers turn black. Foreshadowing. Yeah. Or it could be just like a symbol that she was tainted by the power that she used. Like, okay, sometimes we do things that there's no going back. We are not as innocent as we once were. Something like that. That's probably like the maximum of what it was. But overall, the film was well done. The film was well done. The characters were well done. I liked the age difference because whatever Hansel was, Gretel was roughly double his age, and she carried herself like a caring older sister. Like ultimately, like that's the performance that actress like gave to the role, and I appreciated that. I think she did a really good job. The little kid who played her brother Hansel, they use Rob Hayes did the screenplay for this, and he did a fantastic job. And it felt sort of like a period piece. Like this was they talk in a way that like people nowadays do not talk. It's very proper. It's very sort of like high vocabulary. And I thought that, like for the little kid, I don't know how old he is. I'm going to assume like under the age of 10. But for the little kid to do the line reads that he did, and no doubt they still needed to do like multiple takes, but he did a really, really good job. So yeah, strong performances all around. Gretel, Hansel, Alice Krieger, the witch. It was really well done. If I'm gonna like put out some notes about the production felt really strong. It reminded me a lot of the 1977 version of Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento. There were some very bold color choices in a number of scenes throughout the film. Wherever there was forest, it was very verdant, or it seemed very grim and dank, depending on, like if you go too far into the woods, there are dangerous and evil things into the woods, and you shouldn't go too far in there. There's a scene where Gretel loses her patience with Hansel because he does what little kids do, which is always ask questions, constantly asking questions, and she just gets like fed up with him, and she's like, well, okay, like if you don't want to live here, then like if you don't want to live here and an obvious witch, then fine, go live in the woods. And as she like hurls him out into the night, the woods are blaring crimson red. And it's just very striking, and it's really like well done. It's really, really well done. There's a number of like color palette choices that reminded me a lot of Dario Argento's more like I'm gonna use 1977 Suspiria because it's very like bold. And these are like very like blunt uses of color. Inside the cottage, that is not the case. It's very like, it has a very earthy hue to it. It has like sort of like a dull brown, and it seems like hazy and foggy. And I think that's supposed to, if I'm reading into this like for myself, I think that color choice was to give the impression that the children are in some kind of a thrall. They're in some sort of like logic and reason are being kind of like slowly faded out. That this is some sort of like this is a foggy sort of like realm that takes away like your normal perspective and your normal intelligence. But still, I don't think that's not too much of like a reach for me to sort of like come to that conclusion. So everything was clearly done very, very deliberately. And production, like color choice wise, it was very stunning. It was very, more often than not, it was actually very beautiful, even when it was being scary. Then there's the music. The music is synth. It's synthwave. it's a little like chill wave. It's electronic. Like if you're not familiar with synthwave or like electronic music in general, it's digital music, and it feels appropriate. It feels distant but magical. Try not to use that word as like an exaggeration for things. It genuinely feels like an appropriate like genre choice. If not this, I would have also liked some like orchestral sort of like instrumentals. But it felt right somehow. It felt very like comfortable. I know that some people are kind of like tired with like oh, you see it like in everywhere, and I'm biased. I have like hundreds of songs. Like I have hundreds of songs deep in a synth library. So yeah, I like that music choice. But I did feel that this is appropriate. Okay, because it lines up with the atmosphere that they were going for with this particular film. But yeah, that's Gretel and Hansel, and I enjoyed it. I've been waiting. I think the first time I saw the commercials for this were I think September of last year, maybe October, but like I saw this and I was like, oh, this is really like inventive and cerebral and metaphorical. I know that has also been some of its like detriment. Like it doesn't really hit enough of the horror cues for people. There's not enough. I guess there's not enough gore, or there's not enough like sort of like blunt jump scares, which I think is something that people are still all about right now when it comes to like horror films, like with like The Conjuring or I don't know, paranormal activity stuff where just like stuff slams against walls and things. Yeah, it's not one of those types of films. It's not a film that depends on jump scares. It's not a film that relies heavily on like visceral gore, because it is supposed to be mostly like atmosphere. There's not too much tension. I can't really say that there's a lot of tension, because if you know the story of Hansel and Gretel, like from the classic fairy tale, then you know what's happening and you know what's going to happen for like the most part. So I can't really call it tense, but I can say that the times that they use certain motifs, like the dead children, sort of like nature of evil, and tying this into like an old time like folklore sort of thing, it works really well. It works really well, and there's not really too much like to build on that. It was satisfying for me. I like movies that make you think. I like cerebral sort of like movies. It bordered a lot on magic realism at times, because you kind of had like this thought going into this, like, oh, does magic exist, and is that how like the witch is going to get them? Yeah, it abandons magical realism for just like a fantasy, because there is like magic and it is clearly shown to be a thing. So, but I would say it's probably closer to something like gothic horror, or maybe Gaslamp. Once again, Gaslamp refers to a very specific like time period in horror. But once again, I don't know the exact whereabouts of the setting, so it could be. Anyways, so yeah, ultimately, it's a really enjoyable film. It's definitely not going to be for everyone, and I get that. Like I've seen everything from Army of Darkness, Exorcist, and farther. So yeah, there's a lot of different like shades of like horror. I still think it's a really successful film. It's not mainstream horror. It's not beat you over the head with a severed limb sort of like horror. But I think it's still more than serviceable. I think it's just an overall, it's a good film. And yeah, I really recommend it. And if anyone is interested in seeing this, I really think that Oz Perkins could be... He's really forging a path as an up-and-comer horror director. And if he keeps going down this path, I can't see a reason why he shouldn't be like even a more mainstream success like later on. But that's just my guess. Ultimately, this is all my opinion. But yeah, for this, I recommend it. I recommend like go see it, go watch it. Even if you think it's a slow burn, it's an enjoyable slow burn. But yeah, so anyways, that's my take on Gretel and Hansel, and see you guys later.